Today I'm going to be talking about how waveform attachment to planets and comets is exactly the same and the Earth's orbit is not what you think. But before I do that, I just want to bring up this prediction of energy travel. Excuse me. I was going to do a video and then I decided not to, so I've just thrown it on here. I showed the other day the wave to particle video, and I showed that it jumped from one side to the next, and then I had to put a correction in because in smoke it doesn't do that. It starts off in the middle and curves outwards, spins around, then curves back into the middle. But I put in a little note there, except when it changes direction, as in energy level. So I go outside this morning and there's a cloud in the sky, a chemtrail going from left to right, and it has changed rotation in exactly the way I'd predicted. That on an energy level change, it drops from the top to the bottom. Okay, on with the new video. Okay, over the last few weeks I've shown the Aleph of God, which is power and how energy travels, bursting out of the sun, because the sun is radiation, and this kind of energy flow, all energy flow, is radiation and travels in a double helix. I showed it again on my part 2. The sun shoots out a wave pulse, the Aleph of God, which shows it to be two crossover energy waves, not one big round wave. Those kind of things don't kind of actually exist. They do and they don't, but the first wave that comes out, its tips do not meet. And I have shown this with my waveform. I've said this about energy going through an atom, and that the crossover point is where the electron would be. So I'm going to show with this same waveform how all orbits are not actually orbits. They're actually what is on screen there. And each planet is in the crossover point, and each comet is in the crossover point. And due to the double helix nature, because the right hand arm is going clockwise, the left one is going counterclockwise, or in fact, sorry, they're both going clockwise. Both of them are going clockwise, but when they cross over, one is clockwise, one is counterclockwise. So when they pass through, they cause a double helix. And so this is why we get a southern and northern differing rotation of energies for the spins of the Earth, and it also explains why comets are duck-shaped. So now I'm going to go through my paper that asserts this. So we have the sun there at the top left with a double helix waveform sending out two rotations of clockwise energy sideways. They then come around in the circle and cross over, and this is a pinch point for matter. So it actually looks like the double helix waveform on the right. That is actually what is happening between Earth and the sun and all planets and all comets. Now the reason I'll say this is because we get, if you go see suspicious observers or anybody who talks about solar flares and all that kind of thing, you will find that they're always firing off until they face Earth, and then they go sideways or nothing happens. Now why would it do this? So if you come down to the third picture on the left there, it says arms of waveform going out the sides. We have flares either side of this and no real flares on the inside. And when we do have flares, they always flare off and go outwards, but they always reach our poles when there's been an ejection. That's because the energy is following the waveform, because that's the waveform that attaches Earth to the sun. And so the energy must follow the waveform, and so it spins out and around and goes into the poles, southern and northern, which is why we have the northern lights. That's where that energy that came from a flare that wasn't directed at us goes into the poles. They are spun around and sent through the center of the Earth, but you see them hitting the auroras, making the auroras on the poles. So that's my other explanation there. Flares always miss Earth. Why? Well, due to the waveform being large and wide, all mass ejections are funneled outwards along the filament body into the poles. So now let's get down to the nitty-gritty of Earth has been destroyed in the past. We see all these massive 100, 200 ton stones laying flat all over the Earth. Something happens, scorch marks, all that kind of crazy stuff all over the planet. Nobody knows why. Well, if a voltage drop had occurred and we've been suffering a universal voltage drop since we disconnected from the creator, and the energy is basically bouncing backwards and forwards through the universe as it dissipates and gets stuck in the matter till eventually all energy is gone because it has been absorbed into the matter, which can no longer give out an EM field because there's too much matter. Eventually everything will go dark. So if a voltage drop occurs, what happens to the protective waveform body which is funneling away all these flares? Well, it will thin. This will enable a kill shot solar ejection directly at us. So we have two pictures there, one on the left. We have the body of the waveform. We have the sun and we have the flare direction. And as you can see, if electromagnetic radiation power goes down and our EM shield of the Earth is known to be failing, it is fact, our EM shield is getting smaller. So you'll see the two different directions of flare there. One goes around and into the poles. If it gets less energy, the field will come in and it will literally make a thin funnel towards us. And so not only will it go into the poles, it will be hit directly by any Earth to Sun facing. It will just slam straight into us. So this is how revelation destruction will occur. Our EM shield will thin, bringing in our field body, allowing flares to be directed straight to us, and that will give us an overload, and then the energy will go to ground, and you will have countrywide electrical strikes as the energy from the sun must ground itself. And so it will ground itself by electrical means and electrical activity. And this is a previous drawing of mine which shows all the different waveforms, connections to everything in life, and the fact that the human body, when it's strung up in a cross, is exactly the same waveform because we are created in exactly the same way. Everything starts as this waveform. And so in reality, this does not exist. Yeah, what you've been told exists as with an orbit that just for some reason kind of floats around with some kind of bend. That is not true. This is actually what is happening. We are attached, all planets are attached, all comets are attached because the comet was actually attached to a planet, so it's still part of an EM field system. But yeah, there isn't an orbit. There's no such thing as an orbit. We are either pushed out or pulled in by a waveform that has a pinch point in it which forms a planet, or a comet gets caught in it and it is pulled around like a kite on a string. That is how we go around the sun. There ain't no bend in space. Einstein was a mug or a liar, one of the two. Space doesn't bend, space is a void. Everything is electrical and we're on a string. Same as every person on this planet has an EM field running through them. We are like Pinocchio. Everything in the universe is an electrical mechanical relationship. Energy moving matter. So that on screen exists. A comet the same way. Nothing orbits. We're all connected to the sun by an EM finger. Energy finger. As always, energy shoots out a finger and puts an electron or a planet or a comet, depending on what it was attached to in the first place. But yeah, there's no such thing as an orbit. There is only an electrical waveform holding the planet wherever it is. And there are a couple of electrical experiments on suspicious observers showing how matter can be moved into different orbits by changing the electrical frequency. So check out Suspicious Observers for that. That's one of his contributors. Yeah, so this way, if power goes down, everything immediately comes in. If power goes up, everything immediately goes out. That's the speed of energy. It's literally immediate. So if there is a power drop, we'll all know about it. Don't worry about that. But this is the revelation damage that can occur due to energy levels going up or down. And so finally we arrive at what's happening to a comet and why it's a duck shape and why the Earth has two rotational oppositions to each pole. So we have your DH helix there on the left, like a heart with two arrows. Where they cross over, one is going clockwise, one is going counterclockwise through the middle of the object, which would be, let's say, the Earth. So this way we get a clockwise rotation on one side and a counterclockwise rotation on the other side of the Earth, because that's how it's attached. And a comet becomes a duck. I mean, you can see that I've done a little rotational diagram there. Energy travels in a double helix. So as it passes through the comet, it machines the middle point, because it's called a pinch point. That's where the energy is slowly turning it into two comets, because that's what energy does. As energy starts to retract, like water on a windscreen when you put your wipers on, a big blob of water will be stretched out and it will turn into blobs. It's called energy retraction, causes matter retraction. So the energy retraction makes it thin at the pinch point and separates the two pieces. All ducks will become two comets. And so there we go. Again, conclusively showing how a waveform works and explaining pretty much every single thing in the universe. I have not changed since the beginning. This is how energy travels. It travels in a double helix, and it's coming from God's hand in Habakkuk 3:4, original Hebrew. He is as the light, and from his hand come two horns, and this is the hiding of his power. And so everything that has energy has these two horns that come out of it. It's how energy starts, it's how it builds things, and it's how God runs the entire universe. Energy moves, matter does not. Energy moves matter. Thank you. My name is Lee, and I'm a Christian.